is an academic director and a teacher working at a presidential school, and that's Mr. Frank Ford. Mr. Frank.
Before finally coming here, so that's 9
countries.
9 different countries, yes. Oh, I hated, and I use that word.
There are some of the cherished moments of our lives, and like the older we get, the more we realize how important it is to spend quality time.
Feed myself, because I like meat. I'll have a shashlik, I'll have gush, just gush, yes, like this.
Give us an idea of what a presidential school is and how it's different from all other mainstream private schools in the city.
So we're talking about the real top-notch, difficult. If you do really well, so you can compete with anybody in the world. That's the key thing. The reading improves with the writing, and the writing improves with the reading. I think they go hand in hand. I've always thought that, and the research tends to show that good readers are good writers, and good writers are good readers. Sort of makes sense to them. That's I never heard that before, and I'm like, okay, no problem.
Like, how old do you think this guy is standing?
He's a baby. How old are you?
How old is this guy?
Oh, God knows. How old are you?
Take a guess, please.
I can't. He's got a baby face. What are you? 17?
No, a little lower.
Really? 15?
16? He's 14.
You're 14?
He's 14. But guess what? Today we had a mock test, and this guy nailed 40 and 37, right?
In what?
So in listening, you got 40.
Wow.
And in reading, you got 37 or something. I have to ask you some questions related to a marriage.
I get a 9 on the speaking. No doubt. I think I get a 9 on the writing. But I could lose marks on the
hang on
the reading.
You said 9 in writing?
Yeah.
How do you do that? All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Astra Muse. Today, I'm excited to be talking to you again because I brought a really special guest, and I'm sure you guys are going to like this episode. This is going to be a special edition. And the person I'm going to be talking to today is an academic director and a teacher working at a presidential school, and that's Mr. Frank Ford. Mr. Frank, thanks for coming here.
Evening. Special guest. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
It's not like every day we have a native speaker come and talk to us. So it's kind of a big deal for us.
Okay.
All right. And before we get started, I want to start off this podcast with this little conversation we had, off-the-record conversation over tea. And I remember the way we ended that conversation when I told you it would be just sitting. It'd be two dudes sitting and rambling. And your response was pretty interesting. You said, it's not going to be rambling. It's going to be two adults sitting and having a coherent discussion. Yeah. I really like the way you said it, and that goes to show how serious you're about this, how professional your take is.
Well, it's a posh way of talking about rambling. It's just going to be a coherent conversation, interesting, hopefully.
Yeah.
Just, as you see, a successful podcast, that's pretty well all Joe Rogan does. Mm-hmm. And he's killing it at the moment. You just get sort of people interesting, ask them questions and keep moving. So, looking forward to it. A coherent adult ramble. That's what we shall have.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I like the way you say it. All right, then. So what do you say we talk a little about your maybe background? Would you like to tell our audience a little about what you do at the moment?
Okay. Well, at the moment, I work at Bukhara Presidential School. I've been here since, when did I arrive? 2021. Mm-hmm. We came in September 2021. We arrived into Tashkent. And we're staying in a hotel there with people from the other 13. There are 14 presidential schools in Uzbekistan, and we were there because the schools hadn't finished being made. Mm-hmm. Actually, 4 schools opened. Where are we now? 5 years ago, and they'd been running 2 years when I arrived in 2021. Mm-hmm. And we were waiting for each different school to open. And I was waiting for... The funny thing was, I was supposed to go to Samarkand. Uh-huh. When I had a job interview, they said, you'll be going to Samarkand. So I was thinking, yeah, I know that name. So I'd done a bit of research, my wife and I. But then something transpired, and they moved me to, I think they pulled me off the coach. I was going to Samarkand and saying, no, you're not going there. You're going to be going to Bukhara. And so we arrived here towards the end of was it the end of September? I think it was, towards the end of September. And we started, I think, October 6, 2021, with, I think, 8 international staff.
Mm-hmm. And what was your reaction to that sudden change of plan?
No, you got to go with the flow. I've worked overseas.
Yeah.
Since 1989, I made a decision. I was looking at different places to go. I nearly went to Kenya until I found out what the salary was. And nothing against Kenya. I've talked to a lot of people that have worked in Kenya in the late 80s and the early 90s, and nobody regrets it. Mm-hmm. But then I changed and I took a job in Kuwait. And you've got to be open-minded and you've got to be flexible. You can't afford to be judgmental.
Yeah, I can really tell that. Or I can already tell that. And it's so hard to find it these days, this quality of being adaptable and open-minded.
I think you'll find plenty of people that are, but you'll find enough that aren't. Mm-hmm. And they don't last very long in a school, or they just make such a stink that the school just gets rid of them for a time. It's easy to turn up in another country, and something that I've never said is, I never say, and anyone out there that's heard me say it, you've got my permission to slap me in the street. I've never said, in Britain we do it this way. Mm-hmm. Never, ever. Nobody's interested in that. You know, generally as a teacher, you're interested in best practice. And if best practice was China in the 10th century, then that's what we'll do, or whatever it was. So, you know, going back, you've got to be a bit adaptable. So I went with the flow. No problem at all. I'd met a couple of the teachers when we were doing training. We had some training with Cambridge, because for a lot of people, it's a completely new syllabus, new schemes of work, new way of working. And so I was totally down with it. It's an adventure. You make a commitment.
Yeah. A quick question. How many countries have you been to?
I was telling the kids the other day, I'm going to have to use my fingers. Hopefully I won't have to take my shoes and socks off. So I worked in England for 4 years. I graduated from university in 1985. I did a 4-year degree, and I graduated. And so I worked in England. I wasn't going to be a teacher. I wasn't enamored greatly with the teaching profession, so I was a postman, believe it or not. So I was a postman, and I was a full-time martial arts instructor. So I had a couple of clubs where I was teaching kids. And then getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning wore off as a novelty. And I thought, I'm not doing that much anymore. And so I taught for 4 years in the London area in a number of different schools. I did something called supply teaching. You know,
is it like extra supplementary teaching?
What's it called? What do the Americans call it? You work part-time where you're needed. So if a teacher is sick, somebody rings you up.
Substitute teacher.
You substitute. Americans use that. We don't use that. In England, it's called supply teaching.
Yeah.
Or substitute teacher. So I was a substitute teacher for 4 years until 1989, and then I decided to go overseas. So to answer your question, I went from England to Kuwait. After a year, I had to leave because Saddam Hussein erupted. Luckily, I was out of the country, or I could have been a guest in Baghdad for a time, as a couple of colleagues were. I went from there to Bahrain. Then from Bahrain, I went to the UAE. From the UAE, I went to Oman. From Oman, I went to Saudi Arabia. From Saudi Arabia, I went to Brunei, which is Southeast Asia on Borneo. We were there for nearly 20 years. Then from there I went back to the UAE for 4 years before finally coming here. So that's 9
countries.
9 different countries, yes.
That's impressive. So reflecting on your past travel experience, what's something you learned from traveling all over the world?
Well, not so much traveling, from working.
I meant to say, like, being to so many different countries.
Yeah,
Do you
well,
see any commonality?
I've had, the interesting thing is all except Britain have all been Islamic countries. They're countries that are majority Muslim. They're not Islamic countries. So you've dropped into another. Somebody said to me in school, "Do you know about Ramadan?" I said, "Yes. This will be my 34th." And they're looking at me thinking, "What's he talking about?" So I've had 34 Ramadans because I've worked in all of these countries. They've all had one thing. So what do you learn? What's your take? You've got to be adaptable. Got to go with the flow. Got to remember that you're a guest in a country. I've had a number of colleagues who go, "Well, I don't like the politics. I don't like the this and that." I said, "You know, that's fine, but you're a guest, and if you don't like it, you're not invited to someone's house and you criticise the furniture." That's my take on that. And so just got to go with the flow. Got to be adaptable.
Yeah.
And then you'll live longer. Same as anything. Nothing. I don't think anything particularly revolutionary about succeeding when you're overseas. You're going to meet lots of interesting people. You're going to meet an awful lot of crazy people. You're going to work in awful schools. You're going to see some awful education systems. You're going to meet some really interesting people, and you're going to be humbled. Another thing that's quite interesting, you get humbled when you see what people put up with. You know, you won't complain. If you see 60 people in a class, or I worked in Brunei, which is a tropical country, and we had no air conditioning. So when in the summer, it was hot as it gets here, and humid, and you just sweat. You just got to go with it. Simple as that.
It's such a breath of fresh air hearing this from someone old, because with most old people, they tend to be conservative and they find it hard to adapt to new, in just changing circumstances.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But go on. Sorry.
It's okay. So you can kind of say that traveling teaches you to be more adaptable. It teaches you to be more open-minded. It teaches you to be open to other ideas and cultures.
Yeah.
Understand that this world is big, and we got to learn how to blend in with other people if we're to survive in this world.
Well, I think it helps that I wasn't old when I started.
Uh-huh.
I think I was. I'm 62 now. I think I was 27, going on 28 when I left England.
A quick question: what made you make that decision?
Oh, I hated, and I use that word, and I just disliked the way. Imagine it was all getting pretty laissez-faire, and values were corroding, and that was in the late 80s. And I remember one thing. I said something, and with a number of teachers, and one woman took exception, and I basically said, I think she was one of the senior teachers, and I basically said, "You're just humorless and sad," and that was basically it. I think I left the school the next day and said, "I can't work here. I like teaching, I like the kids, but I just didn't like." Imagine political correctness back in the 80s. Imagine what I'd be like now. I'd be a dinosaur. Excuses for not hard work. There was no money in schools. Teachers were being asked to just do more and more and more for less and less and less, and I just thought, no thanks. So I went abroad. That was it. I went abroad. I wasn't married. I said to my father, he said, "Great," because this may have helped my decision. My father spent 15 years in the Navy, Second World War, and my mother's not English. So she was an immigrant, and so going overseas wasn't the shot for many people, So I just applied for a job and thought, that's it, I'm off.
So would you say now it was a good decision?
Oh yeah, I'm not going to. I met my wife overseas. I've made my sort of not a career, because I don't see myself as a career teacher. Never have done. I just teach, and it takes me where it goes. I've never looked at it as a career. It's just a job that I like doing, and right decision. I'll never go back to the United Kingdom to work. Impossible.
Oh yeah. So,
impossible.
do you have any good memories about the UK, like maybe the food, the culture?
Oh no,
and-
I used to go back regularly. There's a lot of good things, of course. I miss fish and chips. Your guests might. I hope they know what that is. That doesn't need to be. That doesn't need to be translated. It's a traditional sort of English food, and I do miss fish and chips. I used to go fishing. That was my thing. So I miss that. I used to go back because my mother passed away a long, long time ago. She was 58, I think, 1991. I remember I went back. And then my father, he died in 2010, so I was going back constantly to see them. But, and I go back, but if I didn't go back, I wouldn't miss it. Really. My son's in Australia. My wife is here with me. That's the home.
And do you guys often have some get-togethers, like on holidays,
Well,
New Year's Eve?
Unfortunately, this past summer was the first time we'd seen our son in nearly 4 years because of the COVID. So we went to Australia. We went from here to Australia. We went from here to Dubai, Dubai to Australia. For most of July and until late-ish August. So we saw him. We hadn't seen him for 4 years because of COVID, and Australia was very strict and you just couldn't travel. And then at Christmas, he went to Turkey. He went to have his nose done because he had it smashed playing football. And him and a mate, they came through here and they stayed with us. So they stayed here for a short time. They stayed in the old city. They stayed in the Comil Hotel. There's a bit of advertising. You can cut that out if that's not appropriate, which they enjoyed. They stayed for 6 nights. And then we went to Tashkent and we stayed there and we were there over New Year. And then he flew back to Australia. So we caught up, yes.
Right. And it's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
It's really nice to hear that.
It was
because
good.
I'm getting older and I realize that, these moments we have with family, with parents, there are some of the cherished moments of our lives. And like the older we get, the more we realize how important it is to spend quality time.
Yeah,
and
true.
Probably students watching me right now think I'm a hypocrite because I'm always telling them the opposite in the classroom, that I rarely spend time with my family, and I don't ever regret it because my job comes first. But at the same time, I feel in my heart that it's my moral obligation, duty to be there for them when they need me, and not just when they need me, but also when you're all just want to be loved, cared for, appreciated. So yeah.
Yeah, true. I can't add anything to that. That's spot on.
All right. So what do you say before we move on to your academic life, I'd like to ask you a few more questions about life here in Bukhara.
Yeah.
So how do you like culture, food, living here?
Well, we live in the school, so we've got a room in the school. So it's nice, it's fine. Doesn't mean I don't have far to go to get to work in the morning. So
let me then
great.
narrow down the question. Like, so what are some of your likes and dislikes about the city?
I'm a guest, remember, so I'm not going to criticize the furniture.
Don't worry about it. I actually got sort of the same reation from Mr. Muhammad Anas. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to offend people, but
no. What can I say? No. Food's fine. My wife's a vegetarian,
okay.
And vegetarian is vegetarianism hasn't reached Central Asia, hasn't reached large parts of the world. Funny enough, I was talking to students the other day. Vegetarianism seems to be cultural. You just don't. So if I go anywhere, I can feed myself because I like meat. I'll have a shashlik. I'll have gosh, just gosh, yes, like this. But my wife is vegetarian, and so we had real problem. And so they say, I say vegetariansk, and they say murg, no, fish, no, vegetarian, and they don't know the difference between vegetarian and vegan. So that can be a bit tricky. And it was when we started. We found a few places where we can eat. Luckily, there's been there are a few places. For me, dead easy to find something to eat like that. So the food is fine. There isn't a great deal to do in Bukhara.
Yeah, it's a small city.
It's a small city, yes. But I'm plenty busy at school, so that's not a problem. And I have July and August as a break. So they're the things. Shopping is fun. Having lived 4 years in Dubai, when you compare what you can buy in Dubai compared to what you can get in Kozinka, people tell me Kozinka's getting better. But one of my complaints is I cannot find cheese. Decent cheese. The syr, I know that's the Russian word for it, is not great here. I do apologize to any cheese producers, but it's not great. Most of it tastes like rubber. You know,
because people here aren't big on cheese.
No, it's not. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, we're not big on cheese.
It's a cultural thing. What's good? Bread is good here. Not just the Samarkand bread, but the the bohanka, the Russian brick.
Okay.
Bread is good. Soups are good. Meat is good. Eggs are fabulous here. When
at least they're still organic.
And potato, kartoshka. Potatoes are fabulous here. So things like that are really good. But a few sort of luxuries that you sort of miss when you come from a place like Dubai. But other than that, I've got no complaints. Dead safe. Driving's a bit crazy now and again. And they could do with more road crossings. And one thing I'm always joking with my students, they really need to do something about the roads, the quality of the roads.
Oh yeah, potholes everywhere.
But it's a common theme around the world, particularly if you're developing tourism. I keep saying just telling some of my students, find a way of doing the roads cheap, and you'll be we'll give you the franchise. So we've settled in. It's okay. I got no real complaints. People have been nice to us. Friendly enough. School have been good, so it's been fine.
All right, yeah, great. I hope you'll enjoy your stay here.
Yeah.
Right. And what do you say we now shift gear and talk a little about your professional life?
Yeah, go ahead, right ahead.
And I got a few questions here about a presidential school. It's kind of a new thing here, so most viewers, students and their parents alike got little clue what it is and how it's different from other private schools and how it's different from public schools. So I'd really appreciate it if you could give us an idea of what a presidential school is and how it's different from all other mainstream private schools in the city.
Well, it'll differ from a private school in that there'll be no other private school that offers instruction, has offered instruction in English. There are some private schools, whether they're able to offer the level of instruction in English from 5 up to grade 11. That's the issue. So we're an English medium for what's called the STEM subjects, which is English, maths, science, computer science for 5, 6, and 7, and we also do a subject called Global Perspectives. So those subjects are done in English. So maths, science, English, computer science, global perspectives. What am I missing?
Any physical education?
Physical education's done in Uzbek. We also do Uzbek. So we do an Uzbek curriculum. So we do the same subjects that you would do in an Uzbek school, but we tack on the English subjects. And they're lucky in our school now. They're all taught by people who are highly functional in English. Not all are English. Not all are. And this will be the same in a lot of the schools. Not all the teachers will be native speakers, but they will be highly functioning English speakers who are function at a higher level at the moment than the teachers that we can generally find in Uzbekistan, particularly for the sciences as you go up through school. It's difficult to find. Difficult to be able to deliver grade 11, find people who can teach the curriculum and have the English sufficiently to be able to be successful at the level that we're working at. We offer Cambridge, Cambridge International, which is funny thing is, ironically, that Cambridge are not very popular in England. English schools don't really do much Cambridge. They have other examining boards. Cambridge are big around the world. I think there are 1 million students a year taking their exams in 10,000 institutions. So that's where we are with that. So we offer English speaking subjects, English speaking. And when we get to grade 8, we split. Then we add business. Then the science is split to physics, chemistry, and biology on their own, computer science, mathematics. So that's what we offer. It wouldn't be much different to many schools around the world. And there are a couple of schools in Tashkent that offer Cambridge. There's one that offers International Baccalaureate, which is the big competition for Cambridge. So essentially, that's what we offer. We offer. So if, for example, a student was actually British or American, they could drop into the presidential school and they'd be fine. We'd be able to deliver to the standard and in English, and they wouldn't and they would survive. So it differs from in that way that in a government school you would have a couple of teachers who'd be teaching English, but your maths would be in Uzbek. Or if it's in the Russian school, your maths would be in Russian. So we're teaching all those subjects in English. And we run the Honor Tilly, Tarbiyya, physical education, Rus Tilly, we do Russian language. What am I missing? Geography and the history, all in Uzbek. So we have to do the Uzbek curriculum as well, which means to say that our kids, it's full on. So they're doing their Uzbek curriculum and they're doing an English curriculum side by side. So it's quite interesting.
It sounds like a good bargain.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's relatively new. It's a massive thing to start with. It's a big draw on resources, you know, and it's the other thing that we differ from is that we pull all the best students. So last year, our grade 5, to come to the presidential school, you come in at grade 5. We only take 24 students in 2 classes of 12. So the classes are small. And we take 2 classes of 12, and we took 25 students, and I think 2,600 applied.
And what are they tested on?
They're tested on like mathematical things and logical thinking, and one paper's in Uzbek, one paper's in English, I believe. We don't write the tests, we don't mark it. Tests come from Cambridge, and we have nothing to do with it. The principal doesn't see the paper, none of our administration see the paper, the teachers don't see the paper. So we couldn't get somebody in. We've had a lot of people, my son once, a lot of people are of the opinion that students pay. They don't pay, it's free. You've got to pass the exams. In the first year when we were here, we had to test students not only for grade 5, we took grade 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. They all had to take exams locally. So we're basically taking school of 800, we take their best 3 students. So that's how it's happened, all over the Bukhara area. And so that's the huge difference. We've basically, there's probably a brain drain in a lot of local schools because we've taken the best students. So that's our mandate, you know, and we offer Cambridge. We do IELTS and we do SAT as well, which we can talk about later. But so that's the main difference. And I'd like to think that we recently were getting accredited by a body called CIS, which is Council for International Schools. And one of the questions they asked me is, what is your, when you're looking at the school, what are you trying to instill? What are you trying to achieve? And I said, it's dead easy, really. Pick our school up, put us in any city in the world, in an English-speaking country, and we would be able to compete academically. And so far, we've done that. Our academic results last year for students who only had 2 years in an English system. Many of them, English is their fourth language. For some, it's their third. For the majority, it's their second. We did really, really well because we got students who want to do well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea, that the school would be competitive anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But we are an Uzbek school. We are funded by the government. We're not a private school as such. And we do the government system, and we do Cambridge. That's basically we do the same exams that you might find at some big posh school in Dubai or Rio de Janeiro or the International School of Vienna. We do the same things.
So for parents out there looking for a good school for their kid, then they don't have to go looking far. They got a really decent school right here in the city.
Their only way of getting them in now is in grade 4.
Uh-huh.
We're fully stocked.
Uh-huh.
For that first year, we had kids 14, 15, 16, 17, actually probably 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, who tried to get into school. Now, in order to come to our school in grade 4, and there are many learning centres here like this one who do the presidential school exam, and they get people up to speed, and if you can get in, we'll look after you.
So some subjects you recommend students to take up are math, English?
They test them. They test them in Uzbek on their mathematical and their thinking skills.
Uh-huh.
But it's for children who are in grade 4, so they're very young, to come into our grade 5. That's what we get now. And so these learning centres are around the place are teaching that. You can download, you can go online, and you can find out what they do. None of us in school are involved in that, so it keeps our integrity. Nobody can say, to the principal, I've got a kid, and you say, fine, he takes the exam, we won't see it. They're marked blind.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the kid's name, we just see a number.
And
I think the only rule is you must be an Uzbek citizen. And I think that's about it. And you need to speak Uzbek, I think. Well, you would need to speak Uzbek. I think one of the papers is in Uzbek.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that you got a separate assessment body making sure this entire process is fair and just.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's actually a bit of a problem in most public and private schools actually here in the city, and parents often complain about things like nepotism, favoritism. But when you got a separate assessment system other than the school authority itself, that ensures that everything...
my understanding is that we take the top 24 students.
Uh-huh.
They take the top 24 students. We don't know who they are. We don't know, So we've got kids... You've got kids who come from villages. I was talking to a couple of the kids yesterday, a couple of the students. Some are about 2 hours away, quite a long way away, all over the Bukhara region. Mm-hmm. So like I say, there's one in each region. I think there's 2 in Tashkent, because there's one in Nurafshon. So basically there's 14. And they all operate the same way. Nobody pays. We don't do entrance exams. It's great. The only criteria is that you're at that age, you do well on that test.
One of the questions I was actually going to ask you after that was, is it really worth it? But now that you gave me all this, I'm starting to realize that it's students are getting a good bang for their buck with presidential school.
Is it worth it? I mean, I teach a subject called Global Perspectives, which can be very argumentative about different issues. And one of the questions I said, particularly to grade 9 who are now, and I said, presidential school, do you think the money is well spent, or it would have been better used elsewhere? As a conversation question. And a couple of students actually said, it's not fair. We could have used it for all we could put all that money into government schools, which you could. But looking at it, you're going to get the best of the best in one place. What's it called? Like economies of scales make sense. We have 13 international staff in our school.
Oh, does that mean 13 more episodes?
Yeah, yeah. There you are.
All right.
So
guys,
from
take
various,
notes.
well,
Okay.
yeah.
18
Well,
more
we've got, and
13 more episodes.
I'll come
coming.
back and I'll tell you about the nationalities,
Sure.
which were very interesting, very diverse. So, is it worth it? It's certainly worth it to the kids. I mean, I wouldn't hazard a guess if you were in Tashkent. An international school offering what we offer, you'd be paying $1,000 to $1,500 a month, at least, and that'd be cheap. Around the world, you could be paying $2,000 a month.
Oh yeah, the other time I had Mr. Muhammad Anas on the show, he was telling me that it costs a household up to $50,000 a year to send their kids to a decent school in Dubai.
Well, that would be a good school. That would be more than I know.
No, it's like average tier school. It's
well,
not any
you could
top
get into,
tier school.
There are some very, very swanky schools in Dubai, and that are very swanky. But there's a whole tier, because I've worked for one of them, and I worked for one private school there, and I worked for in the government system. The schools that are pretty average, to be absolutely honest. And you could find your way into there. You wouldn't get much, but we don't compare to that here. Presidential schools, we are. Last year we had 3 students who got 3 A's at A level. Now, that would be the equivalent of getting a 40, 41, 42 score on IB. That's equivalent to.
Can we speak like in IELTS terms to put things into perspective?
That's
equivalent to 8.5.
Yeah, that's up there with the best in the world. That's an 8.5. Although none of those students got 8.5 on the IELTS for the simple reason they don't need it. Of those 3 students, they've all gone to the presidential university. All 3 were offered places. 2 of those boys who got 3 A's were offered places at Glasgow University. They were offered 3 B's and they got 3 A's. 2 of our students who got 3 A's are the best students, did the best on the exams. They're doing computer science, so they're absolutely killing it. One of my mantras with the students is, if you do A-levels, and I don't know whether Anas spoke about this, if you've got 3 A-levels, you're exempt pre-med in American universities. So A-levels are equivalent to first-year university work for medical students. So you'll do 6 instead of 7 years. So we're talking about the real top-notch, difficult. If you do really well, so you can compete with anybody in the world. That's the key thing. With Cambridge, it's a brand. You only have to say Cambridge, and it could be. It's like saying Mercedes. It's a brand. It's like IELTS has become a brand. Nobody says TOEFL anymore. IELTS is a brand, and we sort of know that if somebody says, "I've got a 7 on IELTS," then your English is pretty good. You've got a good command of the English, and it does its job. It means to say, and which is my understanding of what it came in the first place, is that it means that you'll survive at university. That was what it was designed to do. In Uzbekistan, you guys have taken a little step further, and with everybody wanting IELTS, and but that was what it was supposed to do. You're telling an American university who doesn't know what the education system is like in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Uzbekistan, when they give you a high school certificate, it says that you're getting 95% in English, and they go, what does that mean? The IELTS will show you where your English really is, and that's yes. So. Going back to your question, our kids are getting a good deal. We're trying. They'll compete with anybody in the world, without doubt. You cannot take that standard of education away, and it's hard. It's very tough. Our grade 11s now in June. May the 3rd is our first exam. Was it May 2nd? Yeah, maths. So the pressure's on, but it's a brand. It says something about you. So what we think anybody that's looking to come to our school, anybody that's in our school, you'll get, as the Americans say, a lot of bang for your buck. And I would say that I'm academic director, but Cambridge doesn't lie. People can check it. A levels are a global standard.
I really got curious about A-level tests after you said some of your students can compete at international level once they ace their A-level test, right? So do you think implementing A-level test all across the board here in Uzbekistan and making it a requirement in all universities or schools would
no need. You don't need
raise
to do
the standards?
You don't need to do it. Well, you don't need to do that. You just couldn't do it. You need the teachers. You need experience. We get international teachers who've come in to the system, and because they're a native speaker and they say teach a subject, chemistry, physics, biology, computer science, you can teach that. They need to get up to speed. It frightens a lot of teachers there who would teach up to the age of what's called IGCSE, which is grade 8 and 9, quite happy to teach physics, biology in there. Once you start getting up to A level, then it gets really, really tough. And you need experienced teachers. You need to do the hard yards. You need to do. You need to do your due diligence. You'll have needed to have done a lot of hard work many years, and you would find it very, very difficult. And you wouldn't need in Uzbekistan to have everybody doing A level. There's no need. I say to the students, everyone says, I said, look, we've taken you out of a system and you've survived in ours. If your system was that bad, you would have all died. We wouldn't have been able to work with you. So you must take some solace in that. We wouldn't have been able to work with you, but it's highly specialized. You have highly specialized language, English at the highest level. It's not enough just to be a native speaker. You've got to be experienced.
Right. But I kind of feel like that should be like our next benchmark for measuring quality of education, because if we want to be able to compete with all other countries out there in terms of education, then it's about time we raise the standards.
You could just. That's true, but does it need? Yeah, you could do. You could say, but if you went bilingual instead of, but you've got good standards in Uzbek and Russian here. Yeah. To adding English would be another thing, and it depends. Who? When you say raising the standard, competing, where are people going to go? What are you competing with? Where are people going to go? That depends. That would be that would take someone at the highest level to have sat down, and worked it out. What for sure has happened is because this was implemented by the president, they've made a tactical decision to get on stream a whole load of students that we could pick up and we could put them in any universities in the world and they will function really well. Not saying that you wouldn't have been able to do that before, but we now have more because you're working at a higher standard. Of course, people have always gone from Uzbekistan to America to do master's degrees. My principal here, some time ago, a few years ago, he got a scholarship, did a master's degree in America because his English is ridiculous, ridiculous, so good. And
sounds like an interesting guy.
Yeah. But you'd find it very difficult to introduce Cambridge to all the schools here. You would struggle for a start to find enough people who could deliver the English. Not saying it can't be done. People don't want to admit, but see, one of the things, the funny thing is here, you're an English teacher, and I meet a lot of people who are English teachers, lots, because we're right next to the university, and we've got co-teachers here. We have 2 teachers in the class. So I work with one teacher, it's Christina. The other English teacher works with another one, and the other teacher works with another one. And but you could be an English teacher here. You do your degree, you teach your English class, and then you speak Uzbek or Tajik or Russian for the rest of the class, and you keep coming back. You need to be, that everyone would need to be in English all of the time. And so you get a lot of the English teachers who are doing IELTS, and they hover around the 7. One, because that's what you need. So the thing, if tomorrow a lot of these institutions said, we'll pay you, you get paid extra money if you get a 6.5 here, don't you, in a lot of places. If you said it was a 7, then everyone would start working hard to get a 7. You tend to get, we tend to do the minimum rather than the maximum in order to get that grade. So you would struggle to get enough people to deliver Cambridge. You wouldn't get bang for your buck. And I don't think you need it. There's plenty of highly educated people, you know, around who are. It doesn't need to be English. It doesn't necessarily. It's many education systems are good. It's just that everyone thinks it must be good because it's English. But when you look at scores and tables, you know, America doesn't kill everyone on literary and numeracy standards. You know, they come behind, and one of them I saw, they were behind Croatia in 24th place. Whether those tests were done in English, I don't know, but they're not. So answering your question, I'm trying to think. Now, no need. We have a thing here. 14 presidential schools. There's a couple of schools in international schools in Bukhara that are offering English. It'll grow. It'll grow.
Right. So to kind of wrap up this education chapter here, I want to ask you this quick question, but it might take you actually a little time to think about it and come up with an answer.
Yeah.
So what's an ideal pre-university education in your image? So
an ideal pre-university education.
So I need you to talk about these 3 aspects. Number 1, the curriculum.
Yeah.
And then the regiment.
Yeah.
So like how regularly they're supposed to take classes and for how long. And the third one is the setup, the school setup.
Well,
so let's start off with the curriculum.
I think the easiest way to look at that would be I talked about Cambridge, and Cambridge competes, and A levels in particular. There are a couple of other A level boards, but they compete in ideology with a thing called International Baccalaureate, IB. Now the difference between the two is that if you're in grade 11 and you're in a British curriculum school, you basically study 3 subjects. So if you were going to be a doctor, you would study maths, biology and chemistry. You might do another one. You might do zoology, or some do 4 A levels. You wouldn't do anything else. If you're in the International Baccalaureate, you would study the whole suite. So you would have to do a science, you would have to do a language, you would have to do humanities. So that's the difference. Because in an American university, you could start off doing an English degree and dump it and hop across and do something completely different and take those units. In England, if you did an English degree, all you would study English. You don't do units of biology, you don't do car mechanics 101. And if you wanted to change and you wanted to do geography, you'd have to start again. So,
which is the way it works here in Uzbekistan too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one?
The British system.
So
if you take up English as your major, you have to do the whole 4 years.
You have to do the major, which means whereas plus the fact, so you're turning out. You've got students who just do 3 A levels. It looks very much like this A level. You build and you do 3 subjects, whereas the IB offers you a wide suite of subjects, which you could say makes you more rounded. There's plenty of time to specialise later. We specialise at 16 in England, whereas in an American high school, you still do a little bit of each. And so which one's ideal? Well, it depends what you're looking for, I think.
But say if you were to found your own school, and set your own rules and your own regiment and your own principles and everything, your design, and you're the creator.
I don't know. I don't know enough about IB. I quite like the idea of IB. Problem with IB is it's expensive because you have to carry too many specialists. At the moment, we offer presidential school offers at the top level biology, chemistry, physics, computer science. Everyone must do maths, and we've added business. If you were doing IB, you'd need to add a geography teacher. You'd need to add language teachers, because you could, for example, study Russian as a first language, and you could study Russian as a second language. You could study Uzbek as a first language and Uzbek as a second language. You have to do a thing called a theory of knowledge, and you have to do some keep a log of work that you do in the community or a hobby that you have. So you would actually have to carry a few extra teachers. And then because you're choosing it, you might have a low number of students. So it costs a lot. It would cost a lot more money. I wouldn't know. That's a really good question. If I were running a school, it wouldn't bother me as long as it was good.
So would you focus on specialization or
No,
generalization?
I'm not so sure. I could be convinced whether focusing on specialization. I like that. I think the IB idea is pretty good. Your students come out with a wider range of skills and they can choose. Whereas in England, you just you choose your A levels and you could do history, English, and drama would be a logical choice. That means you do no language and no science. Whereas at IB, you must pick them up, so you get a broader education. So IB, you get primary, which is broad, and then in England we do this. IB keeps it wide, which makes a lot of sense, particularly with the way their universities, as I understand it, things may have changed a bit. So I'm not sure. I think the most important thing in the school is the most important thing in the school is the environment. It's just a building full of people, People come into the school and they go, "Wow, look at this! It's so clean." I said, "Yeah, it's clean because it's new." But in 100 years, we could still be the same institution, even if the walls were falling down. It doesn't matter. It's about the teachers and it's about the students. It's about the environment. Everything else is fluff, really.
Right. Because that's actually how I kind of feel about the whole education deal.
Yeah.
All of us are trying to figure out what's the best approach, like what's the best education system, when in fact there is none. And then we're all doing the best we can to pass knowledge from this generation to another.
Absolutely.
In the most interesting and the most effective way. And
I mean...
and what I think people should do is probably... try them all and see which one works for them. Well, we're all different learners, and some people prefer specialization, while other people want to learn a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So,
you can only specialize if you've had the experience of a little bit of everything.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't do a little bit of everything. How can you specialize?
Right.
One of the funniest things I've said, asking students to pick their subjects at grade 8, or they came into my son's school many years ago and he was 13, asking them what they want to do for the rest of their life. And my answer to educators like that is, do you know what you want to eat next Tuesday? No.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous question. And how can you choose to do jobs when you haven't done half the subjects? School is a taster. That's the thing. You've got to taste a little bit, and then suddenly one day you think, that's what I'm going to do. But you've got to offer it first. No, that's a good question. I could be convinced. Main thing about any school institution is you need people that want to be there.
Yeah,
that's the key, and it's about the environment. Well, I think we have here, we're lucky because I get the impression that Uzbek students want to learn and they understand the value of education. What the best education system is, we could argue. I mean, everyone says Japan, China, all of these places. And then you look at them and go, yeah, but kids are miserable. Massively high suicide rates. Singapore. I know what Singapore's like. I worked in Brunei. We mirrored their system. Miserable, turning out automatons. And then everyone says, oh, look at Finland and Sweden. Tiny populations of people, and everyone thinks, oh, we should do that. They don't give homework. Yeah, but you think the students don't do any work outside? how difficult it is to become a teacher in those countries. They're really well paid and very highly educated. Completely different system, different mentality. So, yeah.
So yeah,
difficult one.
That's a $1 billion
Difficult
question, right? And since the majority of our subscribers are IELTS students, so what do you say we talk a little about IELTS as well?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and I know you have a background in teaching IELTS. This is something you brought up in our conversation over tea the other day. And so I think the best way to go about this chapter is to talk about each section, right? And the tradition we have here on the podcast is talk about reading first. So you say what you think of reading and what the best way to go about reading, teaching reading is, or improving reading skills. And for the record, we're using 6.5 plus as benchmark.
Yeah.
So whatever advice we give should pertain to those students who find themselves on 6.5 plus level.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones who are trying to leap across to a 7.
Yeah, or above, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah.
And then, because a lot of our audiences are very ambitious, they're driven, they don't settle for anything less than 7.5, and that's kind of the Uzbek thing. There's kind of a hysteria over IELTS.
I'm amazed at the
amount of passion.
The passion here. It's like all the Koreans for those Korean boy and girl bands. They're all crazy about it, but you guys are all crazy about IELTS. The number of places doing IELTS tuition is mad. Never seen anything like it. And there's Tashkent. What's the name of that international? What are they called? International?
International, I guess. You mean the school? Private school.
Oh my lord! On the corner, they own some real estate. God, somebody's doing really well there. on the main highway there in Tashkent, they've got both sides of the road. They've got it full. It's just mad. But anyway, you go on. So reading. What were you saying? We do reading first,
and then listening. And speaking. Right.
Well, I'm amazed here, and I've said this before, that students do really well on the reading, and I know they don't understand it. I said, I know that they don't understand it, because if you understood it, your writing would be better. That's my thing, and we'll come back to that. But the key thing with the reading is you've got to read. And one of the ways that you guys are quite successful here is you get people to do a lot of work on the reading. There's no great secrets. How does anybody get good at something? Well, you get good at it with focused practice of that thing.
I like the fact that you mentioned the word focus.
Yes.
Which is
no. There's a lot of sort of research, and a lot of people talk about it. It's not just doing it. There needs to be focused practice on that thing. And you spend a lot of time doing reading. I used to do, when I worked in Brunei, I worked for a company who I'm not going to name because I'm not giving them any press. Anyway, and
there's some bad blood.
There's a huge amount of bad blood. I don't mind talking. Anyway, and so we would do 7-week courses, and we worked in the evening. It was a learning centre, so they employed a lot of people to work in the government schools, because in Brunei all of the schools were in English medium for a long time. A great project, just very impressive. And so I would teach IELTS, and I'd have people coming to me, not only just for education to go abroad, but many of them would be doing it for immigration. So we did some of the general paper as well. And for reading, the hardest thing was to get people to read in their own time. You'd say to give people reading assignments, and they just don't do it. Very, very strange.
So that's the discipline thing.
Yeah, that's a discipline thing. They say to me about reading, no, my reading's not very good because you don't read. I've never been one to go through the reading papers and go through hundreds of vocabulary words, because you just can't catch up. You just it does help. It's pretty old school, and you could go through it, and you can going through all the words you don't understand, but just practice just doing it. The other major problem with the reading is you're reading at such a pace. We talked the other day, Mohammed, and I was saying that if I did an IELTS test myself, I start to run out of time because I'm not used to working at that. That's the focus. You've got to get used to those 3 texts in those 20 minutes. You've got to whiz through. Tell students, don't second guess yourself. You got to be confident. You got to go. But you've got to read. You've got to get used to reading, and people don't read as much as they should. That's the big thing. As far as the techniques for the reading, IELTS loves to confuse you, doesn't it? It's the question's always a synonym of the word you're looking for in the text, and but just practice, which is what you do here. You know, really old school in a lot of the places. You just get lots of reading tests, which is what I used to do. Just hammer them, and people improve. But I do believe that the reading improves with the writing, and the writing improves with the reading. I think they go hand in hand. I've always thought that. And the research tends to show that good readers are good writers, and good writers are good readers. Sort of makes sense. And if your English is better, your English is better at everything. So that's the thing on the reading. You've got to read wide, because a lot of them are quite scientific. Really, and they because they're designed for students that are going to go to university, and this is the kind of text that you get. That's why I say focused. You've got to sort of think what are most of the texts. Go back, look at them. A lot of them are scientific. A lot of them are historical, very specialised. But if you've had a decent education and you've read, you can access most of the texts. Yes, that's the thing. The other thing with reading as well is you can't get hung up on words you don't understand and not understanding bits. You've got to get students to sort of, if you don't understand it, move on. The door is locked, come through the window, is what I say to students. Forget it. You could still get a 9 if you've got 8.5 on one of your things. Mm-hmm. You could be allowed 37. Would that 37 be an 8.5?
Yeah,
on a reading?
Yeah.
I used to do the reading with my students, I was telling you, and I've been in a room where the student got more than I did. I said, no, you're up to speed, you're young, you're doing this all the time. Your teachers are breaking it down. How often do they sit and do a reading in an hour under pressure? We did an experiment once at one of the places I worked. We gave IELTS to a whole load of teachers who didn't teach it, and they were all squirming. They were looking at, they were going, this is difficult. I said, yeah, we know. This is what we work with. This is what the students work with. They ran out of time, and filling in the gaps on the last bit on the third one. Ooh, painful. So that's the main thing. Got to read confidently. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about if you don't understand everything. Mm-hmm. You've got to be focused on that, on the reading. But students amaze me here, or they get such high scores, and I know they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually really want to follow up on one of the points you made here, which was focused reading, right? And I think it's the biggest missing piece.
Yeah.
Biggest missing component, and here's why. Because now there are so many other media competing for students' attention.
Yes.
They got their phone, they got their laptop, they got the internet, they got social media, and they got their friends sometimes, they just chat away. And if you just remove those things, reading becomes the only way they can kind of connect with the world.
Absolutely, but but you see, that's why probably why this place has got such a good reputation, and you do what you do. People often come to you and say, it's the same. I've trained people before. Okay, I go to the gym, and you get people say, I want to, and then they go, they want to do something, and they won't do the first thing that you tell them to do. Yes. Now, generally, the difference in school is, in a place like this, they've come to you. Whereas in school, they have to be in school. They've come to you. And if you say to the student, I want to get an IELTS 7, and you test them, you're on a 6, you've got a long way to go. this is what you need to do. If they balk at reading for an hour, get off your phone, stop reading rubbish. If you're going to read, you read National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to read, you read a history text. You can get it from the internet. You can test the level. You can just put it in. You can do what you want. As long as people have got to be prepared to do what you tell them to do, and when they do it, they get there. Do you know what was the quote I said the other day that I was watching a podcast, and the guy said, "The success is in the hard work you're not doing," and that's the truth. That's a brilliant quote. It's the same, because of my coaching background, my gym background, my physical education background. It's exactly the same. Somebody says, people come to you and say, "Look, I want to lose 10 kilos." That's great. You're going to have to change your life. Well, I don't want to do that. Get lost. You don't want it. You don't want it. It's very simple.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Simple. No difference in IELTS.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken the test a lot and you've got ridiculous scores,
mm-hmm.
but you didn't get there by doing the same thing that everyone else has done, because it don't work. I talk about IELTS all the time, and I get on a bit of a rant, and that one of the reasons why nobody breaks 7 on the writing is because the teachers don't know how to teach the writing. They said, I've had students say, this is the way we've been taught. I said, that's not a 7. That's a incoherent mess. And because you've got to change. That's the thing. But you're right. It's got to be focused. So you've got to read. You've got to read good stuff. Give yourself an hour. It's a big thing nowadays to sit down and read, because it's pretty dull. Success at IELTS is pretty, you got to work hard. If you want to get a 7, most people can get a 7. And you've got to start to want to get a 7, if you see what I mean. If it takes a year, it takes a year. It takes 2, it takes 2. But most people don't have that mentality. That's the thing. But again, people get very successful here at getting 7s. So you're doing something right,
Yeah, right.
Focused, I like that.
So the gist of this conversation is get focused and do your part.
Yes.
And just do it consistently. Yes. And it's just a matter of time before you get what you want.
I'm spending a lot of my time now in the school with students who are doing their A-level, and the pressure is on. And and I love my principal told me off the other day. Because I quoted Winston Churchill. He says, "You can't quote Churchill. Nobody knows that old man." Basically, you got to do Elon Musk, and you got to do Jobs and all of this. And fair enough. But Winston Churchill's great saying was, "When you're going through hell, keep going." And it's so true. You just got to apply yourself. It's the thing that sets apart great musicians, great athletes. It ain't easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. I love that quote. And just keep going. Say this to the kids. Don't worry. We'll get you through the other end. It's tough. It's tough. It is. The level of English required. If you did IELTS, if you went to London or England and you took a cross-section of the population, they wouldn't get 7 on IELTS. No chance. Most people who are 18, you took a whole load of 18 and adults, gave them the IELTS test, got no chance of getting 7. There's this myth that it's if you're a native speaker, you can pass IELTS. You can't. You've got to be at a certain level. You've got to be, the next step for you is university. That's what the test is designed for. Can you go to a university and we are guaranteed that your English is at the standard that your school transcript says? Yes. Not you've got a school transcript from, say, Saudi Arabia, where your English is, what's a low level of English? B1. You've got university students who that's their level. But no, you're right. Sorry, I went on. It's my rant.
We love every bit of it. We love every part of it. Even the people we got behind the camera, loving every bit of this information. Yeah. And how about listening then? So
listening's practice. We're notoriously bad listeners. We don't listen. Listening is practice. Listening seems to be the one that most people, I think people improve their listening the quickest when you do an IELTS course.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work your courses here? How long do they come?
So,
is it standalone or?
Well, if you mean the program we got on offer, so you mean specifically listening?
No. If so, would you say to someone, I'm going to give you a 5-week block, a 10-week block, or do you just? I don't know how you do it.
We don't exactly have a timeline.
Oh, okay. So I used to do. I was working where it was 7 weeks, 2 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I found as well that listening is the one that improves the quickest, which just goes to prove that people don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sit and they don't listen. When they sit down and it's focused and you do the listening tests, for example, would give my students listening tests. This was before you had MP3s and all this sort of stuff, because I haven't done it for a few years. Give them listening tests written down as part of the session. I'd have a 2-hour session, and we always did a listening test. Sometimes we did 2 listening and 2 reading in a week. So at the end of, I know that at the end of a 7-week block, they've done lots of the test. Because this was another big thing that they come from. They've been doing IELTS, and they spent so much time doing techniques, they hadn't done the papers. And part of the problem is you run out of time and the pressure of the exam. You've got to know what the exam looks like. And so I think listening benefits from listening.
Mm-hmm. But quite frankly, my biggest concern is not the amount of practice they do during the program, but rather quality. So what I mean is, I got a longer list of students, a bunch of students who come in and do 2-3 practice tests a day, non-negotiable. But they're stuck on 25 and 26, and they always ask me why. And my response is, there's no point doing, just hammering away and doing all these practice tests if you're not going back and reflecting on your mistakes, learning the vocabulary.
But their English isn't good enough.
Right.
They're just not there.
Yeah. I feel like if you're stuck on band 6.5, that means you still got major vocabulary issues.
Maybe, yeah. But you'd like to think that someone at 6.5 practice, you will get to a 7 somewhere along the line. But you have to have language enough to access the level that you're working at IELTS. And I've seen a lot of people who take the exam and they're getting a 5. You don't need IELTS tuition. You just need to learn some English. Your English isn't good enough. We're having a conversation, and they don't understand. They don't understand simple things. You can forget. You just need, you just need to. You can't access the language. It's nothing to do with IELTS. You'd struggle on any reading test. You're getting 5.5. You've got the reading age of a 11-year-old. Just not good enough. You're gonna die. And no shame. It's no shame here if somebody comes in and says, I want to do, that's where you are, and you think, and they speak Tajik at home, Uzbek at school, and their Russian's perfect. I mean, give yourself a break. Come on, guys. But no, I think that it comes a time as well when you've got to understand what it's designed for. You've got to have entry level, So listening, I think. There are listening techniques, but a lot of the time it's just listening. You've got to pick up. You get a few accents on it. Sometimes it's an Australian, mostly English. It's pretty clear. You've got to understand synonyms. Exam technique is very important. There's a bit where it says you now have 10 seconds to look at your answers. There's nothing to look at because it's a listening test. So you've got to, you're telling the students, read forward. Always read forward, because one of the best prediction is a high-level reading skill. Things like this. But you guys seem to know what you're doing, so.
Something else I'm doing here. I'm telling students is an extra point is learn how to multitask. Because with listening, you're doing a lot of multitasking. So your job is to read and listen at the same time.
Yeah.
And what I see most students do is when they are multitasking, they split their attention 50-50, which is a recipe for disaster.
And they miss it.
Yeah.
You've got to read forward, and when it's then, you've got to listen.
Yeah.
And then at dead time, you've got to read forward, then you've got to listen.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Right.
It
is so basic, but most students out there don't get it.
Absolutely, but it's like anything. It's not basic if you've never been taught it.
little caveat here, though, like when you're reading and listening, what I'm telling them is they should kind of read the information on their booklet, not as much as they can, but rather only the chapter section that's about to come up, and compress all that information using keywords and try memorizing it as much as you can. So when the track comes up, when it's playing, you're not actively reading. Yeah, you might take a quick look at the booklet if you forget
I get you.
those lines.
I get you.
Yeah, but all other times, the entire time you should be
you can't
listening.
You said multitask. You see, I'm a big thing. My son takes me to task. I say, you can't multitask. There's no such thing. And there's sort of research. You can do a load of things less than optimally. But what you really mean is that when you're listening, and when you're not listening, you're reading, and it's got to be optimal. You've got to be able to read quickly, and you've got to look at it, so that when it comes, I know what I'm doing. But yeah, but that's okay. All of these little things go together, which is why some people are more successful at IELTS instruction than others. But you say they're basic. They're not basic, because nothing's basic until you understand it's a basic.
Oh, yeah.
If you see what I mean.
That makes sense. That's so true.
You know,
right?
So it's basic to you, but you could bring in a whole load of people, and it would be a it would be a revelation. This is, you know, when you work all fields, somebody comes up with something so simple, and you think, well, that's basic. Yeah. Well, why haven't we been doing it?
Yeah.
Duh. You know, which is. Often in sport is the one where somebody comes up with something. You think, why have we not been doing this? And then everybody does it, and it becomes a foundation. It becomes the basic. But there was a time when it wasn't.
Yeah. And that's kind of the whole reason we're having this podcast, so more of these people can hear these conversations. Yeah. And make it their basic. All right, and let's move on to writing.
Yeah, writing.
I heard you complain a little about teachers earlier about writing section, and I totally get that. I totally get that, because I used to be one of those teachers myself at some point before I got to this level, and it took a lot of reading. It took a lot of, but I think I attribute a lot of my success in writing to being able to focus and understanding that my job in writing is to answer my readers' questions.
Well,
so the way I teach writing to my students is, in your essay, you have to answer these 4 questions in your paragraph, with number 1 being what, like what's your point, and why you mean that, or how, and the third question is, you mean, like, can you give me an example? Yeah. And then the last one is, oh, I see. Moment of revelation.
Fair enough. So you have a mantra. You have a basic that you've given them you've given somebody something tangible in which to explain something. Similar things would be make a statement, give an example, and then explain it. Something like that. Yeah,
something along those lines.
So you know, my biggest complaint, is it's not a complaint. It's just that I see people attacking that writing the way that I wouldn't do it, and I've never taught it. Is you haven't got time to plan. The idea that you can plan on paper for that 1 hour paper, you have 20 minutes, and that 20-minute piece of writing freaks people out because it's utterly unnatural. Explaining a graph. The reason we have a graph is so we don't explain data. We don't have a graph and explain it. It don't make sense. Nowhere would you have the writing instead of a graph. It's the graph that shows you it. That's why, funny enough, that's a real test of English. And it freaks people out, the 2 maps together, or the office. One recently had 2 offices, or here's an office now, and here are the plans for the future. And it freaks people out, because that's more natural. But the old graphs where you explain graphs, people think, oh, that's easy, and they make a complete horlicks of that 20 minutes. They mess it up. But in the 40 minutes, your biggest enemy, and I say the same to students, I say, what's the hardest part of that? What's your biggest enemy? And in the end, they all know time. You're always squeezed for time. How many, I say to students, how many of you were still writing when you with a minute to go? Every hand goes up. And so your teachers are telling you, read what you write, make sure that you check it over. Nobody can. So that my big mantra with that is, answer the question in the first sentence. That's it. That's my thing for the writing.
Like saying, I completely agree with this statement.
If it asks you, to what extent do you agree? The first sentence says, I agree completely. What do I see even when I tell students? Something that says, there are many things in the world, a generalization about the world. And I say to students, who cares? What do you know about the world? How many of you have been outside Uzbekistan? Not a hand goes up. You don't know anything. Does that answer the question? No. So get rid of that. Start off. I agree, blah, 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 for 2 reasons. Fantastic. How many paragraphs is my essay? And I've got the students to think, it's going to be 4. Excellent. What are they? Introduction, 2 bodies, reason 1, reason 2, 4. That's it. Now, that's the basic model. And now already you're going to get marks for structure. You're going to know a few linking markers, cohesive markers, signposts, whatever you want to call them. And your conclusion's going to be dead easy, because in the first one you're going to say there are 2 reasons, and your conclusion's going to say, to conclude, I believe for the reasons mentioned, and you're going to mention them again. Now we have an essay template. Now there are others that give you 2 things that you write about. Some people believe that school uniform is bad. Others believe that we shouldn't have it. To what extent do you agree or disagree? What is your opinion and blah, all that sort of stuff. But all of the basic thing is because students don't get the start right. That's my big thing. I'm a big thing. So when I've done like workshops for teachers for writing, I don't do a lot of writing. I would, as I said, you don't need to write to get better at writing. Eventually you need to write, of course you do. But get the first sentence right. So I might give students 10 essay questions, and all they need to do is write the first sentence. And then we'll go round a class and we'll say, give me your first sentence. What's the question? And if you can't name the question off the first sentence, your first sentence is not telling the reader what he's going to read. Simple. That's my biggest bugbear. Within that, vocabulary, of course, structure, of course, but basic. We say it's basic, but I get the feeling in a lot of places don't understand that it's paragraphing, a topic sentence, the function of the conclusion. You often see people concluding something that's not in the essay. One of the things I ask students, what is a paragraph? And the answer is one idea. They can't tell you. Well, if you don't know that a paragraph is one idea, how can you write? Things like this. That's the thing. But that's real focus. You've got to give people a template. That's the key. They've got to be able to see that whenever a question drops, I've done this before. It's no different to being an athlete or you've got to train on these things. Here's a question. They all look the same. Students often say as well, another thing, I didn't have any knowledge. It's not a knowledge test. You can write a load of rubbish if it's coherent. You'll get a 6.5. When you see the essay examples in the IELTS books, some of them that get 6.5 are truly awful, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they are.
They are just garbage, and you just think, I wouldn't give you 6.5 for that. And I say to students, that's brilliant for us. This is rubbish, and it gets a 6.5. You just make this a little bit better, and it's a 7. And they're in the book. So writing, I don't think is focused, and I don't think students get given a template for that style of writing, which doesn't really move. Normally they're 2 statements. To what extent do you agree? And that's basically it. What's the last IELTS question you saw? Can you remember a recent one?
Yeah. So it basically goes, more and more people today work too hard.
Yeah.
And what are the effects, and what do you think employers can do about it?
Okay. Yeah. People nowadays, many people nowadays work really hard simply because of rising inflation or they're used to luxury or whatever. Just two things doesn't matter. Yes. Many employers have tried to help, but of course, help costs money and something like that, you know. And then, I mean, that's something like that. It's not a content essay, but it needs, whatever your first two sentences are, you need to explain them. And students go off at a tangent. You know, everybody in the, you know, a generalized, like everybody wants to earn a lot of money, and employers should, you know, you feel like, no, that's not what the question is asking you. But that's tricky. But you need, yeah, that's a good one.
So your recommendation, your suggestion is get straight to the point. Don't beat around the bush.
I think what we learn, whatever style of writing, if you were doing a PhD, you would do an abstract, an introduction, you'd write the PhD, and you'd do a conclusion. You've actually said the same thing 4 times, you know? And I say to students, don't be afraid of repetition. You're actually telling what the answer, it's only 250 words, but you're saying the same thing 3 times. You have to. You must have an introduction where you tell the reader what, this is my man, tell the reader what he's going to read, then tell him, then tell him what he's read. Yes.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. Yeah. It's so simple that most people, to them, that's, oh, I never heard that before. And I'm like, okay, no problem. It's dead easy. The conclusion and the introduction are interchangeable. You just change. One is blah, blah, and the other says to conclude. Yes. In summing up, or whatever you want to do it. And you give them a framework, and you work on that. And you repeat. It's always the same. There's a certain structure, and within the writing, of course, you have features. You have what verb tense is it in, same one as the question. Vocabulary, try to use synonyms, of course, but you don't need to use lots of words. Whenever you see templates of 7s, it's not big vocabulary that gets you there. It's organized writing, you know, isn't it? It's not vocabulary. It's organizing, focused. Answer the question. That's always a big thing. Answer the question. Because the hardest part, often students, you can see them when they take the test. First 5 minutes, hardest part of writing is engaging the text. So I get it down on there, and then you've started. Now I've started. Not 10 minutes where you haven't written. Then the time. Now I've got half an hour, and everyone's, you know, relax. Engage the text. That's my big thing on writing. Engage the text. Get used to. So when you practice, you know, in classes with students, give them the question, right? And I often say, I'm doing this now with our lower grades for writing. I give them a title and say, write the first sentence. And by habit, they write 3. Read the first sentence, and they read 2. Because people, no, I want the first sentence. The first sentence will tell me if you've understood the question. That's the key. That is the way I think you attack this kind of writing, which is in an exam situation, under pressure, on a topic that you may not be that familiar with. But that doesn't matter, because the content doesn't matter. You can say a load of rubbish. You should say employers should provide everybody with teddy bears, as long as you said this would ensure that their well-being, that would make them more focused, and it would mean to say that the company would have
more productivity,
would have greater productivity, and would make more profit. Yeah, the examiner's going to give you an 8.5. Doesn't matter, you know. Yeah.
So your points, your ideas aren't as important as the organization of your essay.
They can't be, because it's not a content essay. It's not fair. You know, one of if the question is asked, there was another one. My 2 students who did the IELTS the other day, I've forgotten. You know, it's not fair. You can't know all of the content. The other thing is, you see, once again, because IELTS is designed for students going to university. You should be reasonably widely read, and they should be able to ask you about adult things. A lot of people struggle with the content because they're not going to university, or they haven't had that education. Yes, they're not at the height of their powers. Then it becomes harder to get good scores. Or people that have been out. Do you get older? Is it mainly young people that come to take IELTS? You get older people?
Like we got a bunch of 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
That's too old.
How old do you think this guy is standing?
He's a baby. How old are you?
How old is this guy?
Oh, God knows. How old are you?
Take a guess, please.
I can't. He's got a baby face. What are you? 17?
No. A little lower.
Really? 15?
16? He's 14.
You're 14?
He's 14. And today we had
What's he taking IELTS for? You're too young. You see, IELTS, it gets very difficult. You haven't had... It's not designed for 14-year-olds. It's designed for 17-year-olds.
But guess what? Today we had a mock test, and this guy nailed 40 and 37, right?
In what?
So in listening, you got 40.
Wow.
And in reading, you got 37 or something.
What's your writing like?
7.5.
Oh, right. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're smart. But it's not designed for you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't be done. Of course not. But it isn't designed for you. The subject matter isn't stuff 14-year-olds are reading.
Right.
It's not. I mean,
Especially sometimes when you get asked two specific questions. Like sometimes I see essay topics, task 2 topics, where you're asked to talk about human cloning. And there are some essay topics where you're asked to comment on social problems.
Maybe. I mean, you might get a question that would say something along the lines of human cloning is it may be argued that human cloning is the future of society. Others believe that it will lead to our destruction. To what extent do you what do you think? And you're looking at that thinking, I'd struggle to write that.
All right.
God.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. But that's but that's not for 14-year-olds. Not saying you can't be successful, of course not. But it's not designed for that.
Yeah, but the thing is, in this city, in this country, for that matter, a lot of young people, when I say young people, I mean students his age, they kind of get a head start.
Yes.
They get a head start because they got siblings, brothers and sisters who already said their IELTS.
Yes.
And they got this help at home. They got this environment. So they get into this early.
Environment is everything.
Yeah.
If you've got, it's no accident that when, I sit there and talk to our students in the school. How many of you, I got one class, how many of your parents are doctors? We've got 3 hands go up. How many of them, keep your hands up. How many of them are teachers? Another 3 go up. So half the class are educated people. So they've been used to, they understand the thing of hard work. They understand you need a degree. Environment is everything, anywhere in the world. That's the key. And which is why you choose a learning center where everybody it picks you up. That's the key. It's not just about it's not just about providing the work. The whole of it in place. You physically have to go there. It lifts you up, and you're working. What you want to do, ideally, you see, is like in our school. You always want to be working just above your level, so you're constantly trying to do that. That's the thing. But yeah. Pretty good. Got 40. I mean, if I did the listening test now, I know I'd make a couple of mistakes.
Because we're just old.
It isn't old. It's out of. It's not the old. It's just I'm out of practice. I say it's not the old. It is the old, but
you don't want to admit it, do you?
I don't want to admit it, but it's not that. It's just because I generally do when I do IELTS. Another habit that I had when I was a teacher. It's the same thing. When I ask the kids to write, I always write. And so I show them a blank piece of paper, and someone says, right, a student says, go, right, and I write my IELTS, and I finish it, and I hold it up. And they say, well, that was 15 minutes. I said, yeah, okay, it's done. I've done it. So if I can do it, you can do it. But that's just a habit. So another thing that I used to do. And that, lastly, the speaking.
Yeah. So the
production
last one we got.
skills, yeah. You know, that lags behind as well. So we've a couple of students who both got 7.5s, and
since we're going on record and naming scores, we got a bunch of students who got 8.5.
Brilliant.
Oh yeah. And a lot of it comes down to, again, the environment thing and the fact that they got a head start in family.
You see, I'm guilty. We don't. Our students don't need an 8 or an 8.5, and many of them, to get in American universities, they don't need the IELTS if you have it. And we've tried to say, if you are working to get an 8.5 on IELTS, you aren't doing much else. And hats off to you. But you can't be working to get an 8.5 on IELTS if you're doing A-levels, if you're working at the level that our students are. It's impossible. Something has to give. And it's the IELTS that needs to give. So my mantra, my thing in school is, you will get a decent IELTS score off the back of the fact that you're working at a high level in English and the other subjects. Yes?
Yeah.
But if you want to get an 8.5, that just means to say that everything else we leave at the door, and that's it. So you wouldn't be a world class athlete trying to get 8.5, and I don't train for 2 months. You can't do it. You know, you just can't do it. So if you're getting people to do 8.5, that's focused. I want 8.5. I know what's needed. I know the standard. Fantastic. That's great.
And I actually really agree with you on that point where you said you get 8.5 on the back of doing a bunch of other things.
Well,
right?
we haven't got. I don't think we.
So what I was trying to say was, if you look at all the 8.5 and niners we got it here in Uzbekistan, none of them studied linguistics. None of them majored in linguistics. They all majored in either business, economics, law, or some different, and they somehow ended up in the IELTS world, in the IELTS industry. So, and speaking from experience, my major is economics and finance, and all the niners I know out there in Uzbekistan, none of them majored in linguistics. It's simply students who major in linguistics, I kind of feel like their scope of understanding of general topics like economics, social problems, they kind of see the world through like very small hole scope.
That's true.
But when you come in from another industry, you're able to present a well-rounded argument.
Yes,
you're able to present. What puts you on that top tier?
It would worry me greatly if I were the dean of an institution and people coming from business were able to write better essays than the people who were studying English. But linguistics isn't essay writing. That's a different game. Completely different game. I retrained from my original degree, and I did a master's in TESOL. It's called Teaching English to Speakers of Other Language. A really difficult course. Stupid I was. I spent too much money and too much time, and I did it distance learning, and I picked a really good university when I should have picked a rubbish one, because it doesn't make any difference in the end. Top 20 university, bottom 600, don't make any difference. Anyway, and but it would worry me, as you said, if your English specialist couldn't write, and we're getting taught how to write by people who, because I believe it's not the content. I still believe that. So then you're right, but maybe you're doing a disservice to these people. They're focused. You want to get a 9, you've got to work hard. It's got to be your whole focus. That's the thing. So in our school, we get plenty. If they get a 7 or 7.5, we just had two girls the other day. Well done, ladies. I won't name drop. Both got 7.5, so they don't need any more. They don't need an 8. They don't need a 7 on the writing. They don't need it. 7.5 is fine for American universities together with their A-levels, and it's fine here. But if you want more, you got to go that extra yard. That's the thing, which you're doing, yeah. So they said to me, students said to me the other day, if you took IELTS, what would you get? I said, good question. I get a 9 on the speaking, no doubt. I think I get a 9 on the writing, but I could lose marks on the
hang on
on the
a second.
reading.
You said 9 in writing?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because there are a bunch of times I tried. And
well, I think I'd get a 9, but I'd get, even if you got 8.5 and somebody, there wouldn't be any mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd answer the question.
Because my feeling is some examiners are afraid to give candidate a 9 in writing.
I think they are. I look at it. Yeah, I don't know. I think. You're quite right. You corrected me. I'll get 8.5 then.
Yeah, because the thing is, even when you write a picture-perfect essay, it's just...
It would be easy. Let's say I got 8.5. Then on the listening... You see, on the listening and the reading, I would drop marks. I can't read quick enough. Never have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could quite easily get 36 on a reading.
Mm-hmm.
Most native speakers could. It's got nothing to do with native speakers.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing to do with it. If you, as I said earlier, if you gave the profession David Beckham IELTS, he'd get 6.5. He'd get 6.5. He would.
So you see all the kids and teenagers out there, if you got 7, you know English better than David Beckham.
Listen,
you got that.
I've spent a teaching lifetime telling people, look guys, listen to me. You get a 7 on IELTS, you're really good. Your English is really good. You can go to any country and survive. Can you imagine getting a 7 on Russian?
Probably not.
You speak Russian?
No.
You speak Russian? Could you?
I know a little Russian.
Right. If you're a Russian speaker, could you imagine getting a 7 on Tajik? How good would your Tajik be? And you speak Tajik at home?
Probably not.
How many people would get a 7 on Uzbek? How many people would be able to answer the questions that you said in Uzbek?
Mm-hmm.
Would be able to write, have linking phrases, would know about an introduction. You know. So if you imagine you at a level 7 in your native language around the world, you're good. You'll function. You know. It's so when they do the ones for immigration, most places they take a 5. Yeah, that means you can function in society and work. Mm-hmm. Well, a 5 really. When you see a 5, that's just a pile of rubbish normally, isn't it? A 5 writing is like just nonsense. You haven't answered the question. It's full of mistakes. There's only one paragraph. You know, and you need a lot of work. It's not your fault if you haven't been taught. But anyone gets a 7 on IELTS. You know, when I went with my wife to Tashkent, there was one of the office workers ago, and we got speaking English. She said, I did IELTS. And she got a 7.5. I said, your English is really good. And she said, no, not really. And I'm thinking, no, your English you've got a good level of English. Your problem is you don't speak English anymore. So it all just goes like this. You go to the gym and you stop going to the gym. When you go to the gym the next day, you break your back and you can't walk for 3 days. You've got to use it. That's the thing. All of the students here, it's like you go down. I used to teach doctors in Brunei, and of course doctors are normally the smartest people in any room, aren't they? And they'll tell you that. and they were trying. Many of them, some were from Myanmar, and they'd done all their medical studies in English, and they couldn't get a 7 on the writing. They couldn't understand it, and they needed a 7 on the writing and the reading. They could get an 8 overall, but if they didn't get a 7 on the writing, and they just couldn't break it until eventually a couple did. I used to private tutor them. You know, I just said it's because you don't write anymore. You've got to practice.
Yeah, so the mistake most English learners or language learners, for that matter, make is they see it as a marathon with a finish line, and then once they hit it, it's over, when in fact it's just a lifelong
IELTS
process.
is just a test.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It isn't a syllabus, it's just a test.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you do well in tests if you know the test. I mean, what does research show? That it can be 10% of the mark. Mm-hmm. You know, you see a professional football team, you took the best team, Manchester City, and you watch the coach introduce a new game, and they're all confused. People go, they don't know what they're all confused. Until you learn the game, then you can play the drill. And the coaches will do this on purpose. in order to confuse them, because out of chaos comes order, and that's all the game is. It's chaotic. You must make order. So that's a technique, and it's the same. If you don't speak and practice, it just tails off.
Yeah, you start losing your edge.
Of course you do,
Yeah.
but everybody does in any job. Doctors, you say to Anas, you meet a doctor 2 years after the medical. No doctor would pass their medical exams 2 years after they've taken them. They'd all fail. No chance whatsoever. They're at the height of their powers, and then they move on and stuff. They could get back to that, but it would be very hard work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no one likes to go back to the blackboard and just start over.
No.
Yeah.
No. Interesting. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, yeah. We loved all your answers. Now, to finish off this section of the podcast, I want to ask you this last question. And as ridiculous as it sounds, do you think non-native English teachers make better teachers than native English teachers? Right, because I personally have this theory that because we're able to communicate and connect with our students both, academically and culturally,
maybe
we're better communicators than native speakers.
Yeah,
assuming we have a decent command of English.
Yeah, maybe. I would need to think about that.
So, say you want to learn Russian. Would you rather get taught Russian by a native Russian speaker or a friend of yours or someone?
No, it depends how well they spoke Russian. I mean,
now, assuming they both have a good command of English, Russian. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the best. You learn best from the best teachers. I think there's a skill set about being it. It doesn't necessarily matter whether you're a native speaker. I think too much is played of that. I know there's a lot of people who've earned a living around the world teaching English because they're native speakers, not because they're teachers. And to a certain level, that's fine. But I think you want to learn from the best teacher. Maybe an insight into the culture might help because, as you well know, a lot of it can be. But I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because from my experience of teaching at different schools. Here in Tashkent, what I've learned is those teachers with good command of English, also local, they can better connect with the student because they simply understand the problems that are unique to this culture.
Maybe. But, maybe. But half the thing about being as you said, half the thing about being a teacher is I keep saying the same thing. It's all about environment and in understanding people. And you'd like to think you'd be tuned into the difficulties. Of course, if your English is like brilliant and you're a non-native speaker, you may understand some technical things that students were making mistakes on. But I don't know. I don't necessarily. You see, I don't think it matters as long as the teacher can teach.
Right.
That's the key thing. You've got to look at, people say, "Oh, you're being taught by a non-native speaker," and I say, "That's so what?" We have in our school, we're an English medium school. Half our staff are non-native speakers. They will speak another language, but their English is at a sufficient level that you wouldn't know. You come from the Philippines. English is your third language. You speak 2 other dialects. We've got our maths teacher, Fred. I'm giving Fred a plug because he's quite brilliant. We've probably got the best maths teacher in the country. And his interesting thing, he can speak to his wife in one language and speak to his kids, and he can speak to his wife in a language his kids don't understand because he's from Kenya. And his English, of course, maths, brilliant.
You said this guy, teacher, works here, right?
Yeah, he works with us, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he'd be a good interview. But so that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think the key thing is, can you teach? Do you understand? And then any shortcomings you can overcome. But I don't think you need to be a native speaker to be a good teacher of English. A lot of the teachers that I see here are really good. They're really good, and English is a third language. You know?
Right.
Yeah. You just got to be good. You've got to have that focus to want to be good. I think that's the important thing. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
You made really good points about environment and having focus and knowing your thing, which is really important.
And you got to know
which your nationality, race, color, or ages.
It doesn't matter.
You just come in and do your job.
It's like people say to me about, what about my accent? Everybody's got an accent.
Yeah.
You know, someone says you don't have an accent. Well, that's an accent. Everyone's got an accent. No need to worry about that. That's not an issue. There's enough varieties of English. Depends where you learn in the world. Anyone listening to this podcast would think that you're an American interviewing a Brit.
Yeah, I'd be flattered, but I still got a little bit of Uzbek accent.
I don't think you have. I don't think. I don't think you have. I think you sound like an American.
Oh,
I'm
probably good at faking it.
Well, no, because it's difficult to fake. Because we've been talking for what? How long have we been going now? I mean,
almost 2 hours now.
Yeah, we've been going a long time, and you can't fake that long because unless you were concentrating really hard. So, but someone listening would say you've had an American education, and I sound like a Brit. Yeah.
All right, I feel like we had enough of education, and we should probably move on to some other topics, because education is not all there is to life.
Not at all.
And I know you have some background in fitness and coaching and training people.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd love to hear you say a few things about your gym life as well.
Oh, my gym life has taken a bit of a...
And we can go about it maybe starting with your workout regime right now.
Oh, at the moment, I have a training partner, a colleague of mine, Goa, who's our computer science teacher. He's a beast, which is good. It helps, strong as an ox. And we've been... about a year ago, I fell. I went to, not Amasoy, what's the other place on the other side? Chimgan. Is that what it's called?
I don't know. I only
it's
know
in Tashkent.
One gym here.
And in Tashkent. And I fell and I hurt my wrist.
Oh.
And I did the rookie mistake. I fell, put my hand down. So I hurt my wrist. So I haven't been able to do the sort of workouts that we've been doing. So we've been concentrating, my colleague and I, on trying to get our deadlifts up. I don't worry too much about all the old stuff that I would have done when I was a bit younger. So I can't train with as much now for various various reasons. So we've been going to the gym, whereas before I would go 4 times a week. Recently we do 2 sessions a week, or maybe 3.
Do you do like old school stuff, or do you have like push, pull, legs?
No.
split?
I'm trying to make my deadlift stronger, so I'm trying to get back to deadlifting 200 kilos.
So what is it about deadlift? Everyone is crazy about.
Well, the only reason I do deadlift is very, very simple. I hurt my wrist, and I can pull in a straight line. And I've hurt my shoulder, and I can't bench press, and I can't French press, military press above my head. So I'm limited in what I can do, but I can still pull. I can rep 150 kilos off the floor.
That is unbelievable.
So
look at this guy. He's 60 and he can rep 150 kilos. To put it into perspective, that's size of a cow.
Yeah, no, it's well, no. Somebody said, no, it's not great. I mean, but it's okay. Somebody said, if you can squat your body weight plus a half, if you can bench press your body weight and deadlift twice your body weight, you're in the top 5% of strongest people in the world.
I've heard that. I've heard
and I can do that. So I'm quite happy. At 62, I'm quite happy. So, but anyway, so my colleague Goa and I, we trained. So we're trying to getting a deadlift. About a year ago, I got up to 200. I want to break 200, but I've regressed. I've regressed because I hurt my wrist, and so it took the edge right off. I also got something in my foot called plantar fasciitis, which basically is a pain in the heel. At the bottom of your foot is a layer on top, the fascia, and it damages and it just causes pain. So I have to bandage my foot. So that was basically it. So my training regime is we would do a general sort of circuit once a week, which is a push and a pull, but it's not planned push and a pull because so it would involve I do rowing, I do some curls for the beach, do a step up, sometimes we do a battle rope, and we would put a deadlift in, and we would put say during the circuit, let's say 140 kilos. You have to do that 5 times. I might add a squat, something like that, and we do that circuit twice. And then another one, if we're not, and then another one that we do is we do something that's called 11s. I'd like to think that I thought of this rep scheme, but I'm not sure.
What's that?
Well, it's very simple. We do a leg press in the leg press machine. So, and then we do a deadlift, a stiff leg deadlift, RDL. Do people know what that is?
Yeah.
Which is basically you keep your legs stiff, you bend over and you pull it, and it works your hamstrings.
We call it Romanian deadlift.
It's a Romanian deadlift, and a stiff leg deadlift is actually a slightly different. I can never remember which one's which. So we do a Romanian deadlift. So the rep regime is you do 10 on one, you do 10 on one, 1 on the other. You do 2 on one, 9 on the other, and you keep going.
And what's the idea behind this?
It's just
for fun.
No, because we do the RDL with 100 kilos, and we do the leg press with 240 kilos. So you're doing 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you're doing 55 reps on each. Generally, you do that, and for 3 days, you're sitting down pretty gingerly. That's the work behind it.
The way you describe it and the way you just throw around all those numbers, it makes me feel so skinny.
Yeah, but
I'm weak.
I'm 40 kilos heavier than you, so it's okay. Yeah. And that's what we do. And then every now and again, I walk a lot. Today I've done the equivalent of I walk from here to the. I went shopping. I walked from here to the Korzinka over the big one.
Oh yeah.
And I walked back. And then I walked from here to the other Korzinka, and I walked back. I shopped twice today.
That's like 10 plus kilometers.
It's probably closer to it is, but that's okay. So I can do that, and I'm not collapsing in a heap. And then every now and again we do maximums on the deadlift. So we may go up in 2s just to get our maximum. So we warm up on 100, do a couple, 120, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, and then and then maybe we try one night, or if we're doing maximums, we just do ones. But I haven't done that for a time. Right. So that's basically now. Whereas before we would do a number of circuits. My friend Goey, he does MMA because he's quite good at all of that, the grappling and stuff. So I'm sort of now I'm still strong, but I'm not very fit. Right. But okay, I'm still okay.
I got this really interesting question. If you could pick 5 exercises and only 5 and do them for the rest of your life, what would they be? Only 5.
I would keep deadlifting.
Okay.
I would squat. I can't bench press anymore, but I might do a hammer press, which is the line one, because I can do it like that. I've been doing that one-handed.
So bench press
yeah,
variation.
You would do that.
So we got 2 more. We got 3 down.
Exercises in the gym. Some sort of row. I can't press above my head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe RDLs, maybe some sort of stiff, but that's a bit like a little bit like a deadlifting. But those would be the 5. If you did that, you'd be in sort of decent, and you tampered with your diet, you'd be in sort of decent shape. But you see, it's a good question. You ask why I never deadlifted before. I've only been doing it in the last few years because the rest of the time I was doing other stuff, you know. And but I'm just getting old now. The bits are falling off me. I mean, I used to do one of the things that I used to do just to keep in shape would be in squatting on a free bar would be 100 kilo squat. You do 10 times 10, and that would keep you in good shape. At the end, you're like that, and so and I know, or I would do, pick a bench press, pick 80 kilo bench press and do 80 reps. That would be the session. But I can't do those things anymore. I could do them 4 or 5 years ago when I was in my late 50s, but I hurt my shoulder, and then I hurt my wrist. So those sort of things.
And what do you think about mobility exercise? I feel like you can do with more mobility exercise.
I could. I mean, when I left university, my original plan was to be a karate instructor, and so I was mobile, not great, not Chuck Norris, none of these guys, and but I was fairly mobile. But mobility, you can do all that sort of stuff. I can get down into a squat. Deep, I can sit in the squat position. What they call the Asian? It's called the Asian squat, isn't it? Where you can.
I love this exercise.
I can sit down. I can sit down into that, and I can get out of that with 100 kilos on my back. So, yeah, probably. So not so much now.
Yeah, because I actually get trained by this dude, and he's genius, super genius. Like when this guy looks at you, he doesn't see you, he sees
That's the big monster in Chekhov.
No, I'm talking about the other one, the shorter one.
Oh, right.
Mr. Vadim. And when he sees you, he sees an anatomical chart.
Yeah,
you can see the tiny muscles in your body. And what he once told me was basically, once you start entering your 40s and 50s, you might want to do more mobility exercise to keep your joints healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. But yeah.
But you for sure need those heavy compound moves like deadlifts and bench presses.
I do. It gives a bit of bang. It gives a bit of bang for buck. I mean, it was very interesting. I was watching another podcast, and the woman on there said that the one determiner of funny enough, they said fighting cancer. Fighting cancer is one of the best determinants of your survivability of cancer is muscle mass. And I thought, I like that. And, when you follow all these people, what is it? Another trainer said you can't go wrong with strong, So if you're strong, as you get older, bone density, just do something. I could walk 10 kilometers and easy. I'm amazed young people can't walk. It's explainable in this weather, but I like walking, and because of bits are falling off of me, my shoulder's bad. I can't do all the stuff that I used to. I can't do circuits with curls. I can't do lat raises, front lat raises. I can't do those sort of things.
But it's still good to hear that you keep active.
Unlike
most
Well,
people in their 60s and 70s who just call it quits and just turn on the TV and watch news all day long.
No, I try to keep active, keep the brain going. The alternative is not worth thinking about. So I'm quite lucky. At my age,
that's very admirable.
We all do. I don't know. I mean, you make choices. That's my choice.
Right.
I'm lucky here that I've got a training partner. That's anyone's listening. You want to go to the gym, either invest in a trainer or get a training partner. It's the best thing you do.
I'd love to join your session one day. Your sessions,
absolutely,
with your friend. But you told me you train at nighttime.
Yeah, I'm working. The school starts at 8 and we finish at 5.
Yeah.
And I am an old man, so I need a nap. So I go home for a night, as my son used to say, night, daddy, yeah, night, and go out at 8 o'clock.
Right.
And then train at 8 o'clock. So I'll probably go tomorrow. If you're there at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, I shall be there.
I'm more of a morning person.
Yeah,
I prefer to work out in the morning.
I don't think this is falling a bit. I don't think my boss will allow me to. Excuse me, can I just go to the gym? Much as that would be nice.
Don't you have your own gym at school?
I like to go to the gym.
Right.
It hasn't got a Olympic bar. It's got some stuff. It's fine.
And it's also, it's not really about the equipment. I think it's also about the people around. Like when you see a bunch of big dudes.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of monsters in there that make you want to keep your shirt on. And, guys like that, you just think, oh my God, and a couple of the trainers are in pretty good nick. But no, I go for the Olympic bar. I'm beyond all that now.
Yeah, walking in there, I feel like spaghetti noodles.
Well,
that's how I feel.
It doesn't matter. Everyone's got to start somewhere. That's the problem you see with all these. There's a great statistic that I was looking at that if everybody that had a gym membership turned up to the gym, no machine would work. There'd be 10 people working for each machine. So they've crunched the numbers really well, and they know that 40% of people never go. They're
just simply too embarrassed.
No, they just don't. They just don't go. People buy, but it's always again focus. We said earlier, a lot of people say, "I'd really like to get good on IELTS." It's dead easy, really. Get a class and start studying. It's no revelation. Same with the gym, but they just don't go. You've got to make a focused decision on the things that you want to do. That's all. It's dead easy, really, but it's difficult. As I say, if it were easy, everyone would do it. But the gym's good here. I have to say, we did go to Parliament. I went to Parliament to start with, and that was quite good. And we've moved to Chekhov. But it's good here. It's not too intimidating if you start, because there are some big monsters. Oh my God!
Are you talking about Chekhov or Parliament?
No, Chekhov. Not so much. There's a couple of guys. There's a guy in there. He's a monster. Yeah. He's scary, but he's not. He's a nice guy. He sees me. A couple of guys.
Yeah.
Shake hands. How are you? They leave the old guy alone.
And that guy actually loves doing calves exercise. Every time I see him, he's on his Smith machine doing calves.
Yeah, I don't do calves. I was lucky. I've got good calves. Yeah. Smith machine doing calves. You don't see many people doing the horrible things. Yeah. You don't see many people doing that. Everyone does curls. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. All right. Speaking of important decisions, on the next chapter of the podcast, I'd love to ask you some questions related to marriage. I'm not sure, because I thought to myself, like, what are some questions I could ask someone way older than me? Well, so I figured it's best to ask you some advice on how to choose the right life partner. So what are
really?
Yeah.
Wow. I've been married 32 years. 32, 33. Darling, she'll kill me. She'll see this and she'll go, you don't even know how long we've been married. Yeah. Is it our 33rd Valentine's card exchange? Now, well, the good thing is, yes, good. I don't... difficult question.
Because you said...
Do you choose a partner, or does your partner, do they choose you? Yes, very good. What did I say? Please.
Because earlier in the podcast, you said, I was lucky to meet her. So
yeah, well, I was lucky, yes. I met my wife when I was working overseas. I met her in...
so would you say
she was working in
just luck, or there are some...
Well, it's chance and circumstance that you meet wherever you meet. And I met her, and she was working in a gym, funny enough. And, 1991. We got married in 92. Yeah. I'm lucky. I was lucky. Made the right decision, found a supportive partner.
So they have to be supportive?
Well, I think so.
One trait, one quality. They have to be on board with your goals, values, and your priorities.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. Priority is, when you have a child, is the child. Priority when you're together is both people's happiness. you know. Tried to make sure if my wife wanted to do something, that we do it. She wants to go somewhere, we go. Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but I feel like another really important ingredient to a successful marriage is commitment.
Oh yeah,
because
you've got to be committed. You've got to be focused. We use that word a lot. Yeah.
Because you go through a lot of ups and downs, and if you don't stick side by side,
that's right.
When things get tough,
got to stick together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it just gets so cliched after a while, probably because it is.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not cliches. There's just the fact.
Fundamental truths about marriage.
Well, it's the same as about relationships. It's about friendship. You could say the same things about having real friends. You go through and you find out who your real friends are. You know, I can imagine a lot of people would the same thing. You want to start a business and you will need to get hold of some money, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, I thought you." You know, real friends help you. You find out who your friends are. You've got to be committed to people. You've got to be able to. She's got to be able to put up with my stupidity. You can't worry about people's failings. This is the thing I said about working abroad. You can't be too picky about every little thing. Can't like drag you down. You know. So I don't know that I have marriage advice.
Right.
I've been lucky. Very, very fortunate. My son says, "What on earth is she doing with you, Dad?" Thank you, son.
Yeah, that means I can just scratch my next question off the list, because it says, do you have any advice to new couples out there?
Advice to couples. Yeah, you've got to respect each other. You've got to. It's all the cliches. Helps if you're in love. But advice, just make a life. Don't listen to any external noise as well. It can be very difficult, particularly culturally. I've got to be very careful what I say here. But don't listen to too much noise, you know. Difficult if you're living in somebody else's house. We've always lived in our house. And so, you know, things... So it's difficult in different cultures if you're living in someone else's house. Am I allowed to say that? Are you going to cut that? But yeah, young couples, have fun, do stuff together. Don't be afraid to do things on your own as well, I would say. That's another thing. Don't think there's anything wrong with people having separate hobbies, should that be the case. But that's it, really.
Yeah, knowing how to also reach common ground.
Yeah, knowing how to reach common ground, knowing how to make a compromise, knowing that people need time on their own, all of this sort of stuff. Right. Yeah, we should write a book. That's pretty deep. Right,
it is, and it's a delicate matter.
Very.
Very delicate and personal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and well done. I hope at least you can kind of answer my next question. I really want to know your personal philosophy, because it's a common tradition here for us on the podcast to ask towards the end of the podcast every guest what their philosophy in life is, their like moral compass, their North Star, their guiding light. So like what's your personal philosophy? Do you have one?
Well, I do. I used to say to my son, and still do, I said 3 things. I said, work hard, do your best, mind your manners. And I've said that to students. Just work hard. Do your best. In front of God, whoever your God is, you can't do any more. So particularly in a school where everyone is trying to squeeze every inch of ability and you're not getting 99%, you know, and all of this. Who gets 99% or whatever? Just do your best. If you've done your best, then the criticism from anyone else just rubs off. It goes off, doesn't rub off it. Washes off your back. And just mind your manners. Just try to be nice to people. Makes a huge difference. Just try and be nice. Be remembered for being nice. It can be really difficult sometimes, but generally when we all remember all the people. We all remember the nice teachers that we had. You know, people that were genuinely had empathy, who were just kind, who were nice. So those were the 3 things: be nice, work hard, well, mind your manners, work hard and do your best. And pretty well, whatever you do, you should have some success, I think. Other than that, don't know. Go with the flow. If you're living abroad, as long as I have, nothing's perfect. I remember it wasn't told to me, but it was told to a colleague when I worked in Brunei, 1997 to 2016, and then one of the locals said to the international teachers, to one of the teachers who said, "We didn't bring you here to criticize us." And I remembered that. Don't come here and find fault with everything, you know. But one thing I will do, if somebody asks me what's wrong, I'll tell them. I might not volunteer the information. So somebody said, "What do you think's the problem with the school?" I'll say, "Well, we need to do A, B, and C," but I'm not going to volunteer criticism, because it's easy to go somewhere and criticize, you know. Particularly if you just had 4 hours with no electricity.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, oh my God. But I just had one of the kids came in and he's said, "How's it going?" "Yeah, I live in a village. What, we've got no electricity." So I'm not complaining, you know. You're out in a village with no electricity. Can you imagine? It must be freezing. They're all burning their sofas to keep warm. So that's the thing, philosophy, yeah.
Right, like these three things actually deeply resonate with me, because sometimes when I feel like I'm lost, I just tell myself I'm just gonna keep going and keep working hard, and hope I'm gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep working, keep your head down and working. Yeah.
That'll do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Nothing too funky.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. Just work hard, do your best.
And one final question for today: how does it feel to be your age? How does it feel to be 60 plus?
That's a good question. I know my age when I try and run across the road, because I've slowed up. I was really good until I was around 54. And I was really, I played football and I could run around with young people, and I was really good. And now I've just started to get a few injuries, which mean to say that jumping off things and stuff. But the answer to the question is better than the alternative. The alternative is you don't reach my age. And I know lots of people that haven't. Mm-hmm. So it's fine. I mean, you know,
So you feel grateful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to keep going. Doesn't matter what you do. If somebody said, "Oh, look, you've got this," you just got to keep going. That's the only thing. As long as I can keep doing things, I'm okay. My mental faculties are okay. We've had a coherent. There's been limited rambling. There was one question there that you had me that I genuinely couldn't think of a really brilliant answer. But I've still got my sort of faculties. I can still walk around and stuff. So it doesn't feel any different to I was when I was 40. It's just I'm older. You know, the same things. I like pretty much the same things. That hasn't changed. Same music, same food, same sort of things. It's not a lot changes, funny enough.
But it's still good to see that you're in great shape and you still have this open-minded attitude.
I try to be positive. That's the thing. I had a colleague who. For a long time, they had a severely disabled child, and really bad. Couldn't speak, couldn't move, and they would take turns to sleep with him because they had to turn him over, as you get bed sores if you can't move. And he needed full-time care, and he got full-time care. And he picked me up and I ended up working with him for 4 years. And he picked me up and drove to the place of work, and he sat next to me, and he never complained. And him and his wife, and what they went through, unbelievable. Couldn't go on holiday. One of them could go, but couldn't both go on holiday, couldn't put him on an aeroplane. Everything had to be designed in the room for him, and he never complained. And I sort of thought then, I'll try not to complain. Of course I do, because I'm human. But never, I looked at that and I thought, getting older, I'll never complain about anything ever again. Poor boy, bless his soul, he passed away young, died at 17, 18, what was he? Young, but he never complained. He just, been awake until 4 o'clock in the morning, came into work, never complained, neither did his wife. Unbelievable. Saints, the both of them.
That takes a lot of mental
so I've
resilience.
sort of said, to get older, I'm just not going to complain. When you see stuff like that, you just think, wow. But being human, every now and again I do what to do. So I hope that answered your question. That's a philosophical stuff. Very difficult. That's why it's philosophical.
Yeah.
If you ask me next Tuesday, I might have a different answer.
But anyway, that answer was great. So let's end this podcast on a more positive note. What's one piece of advice you would give to 15-year-olds out there whose life is just getting started?
Oh, remember, it's just getting started. So don't be in a hurry to do everything. Listen to your parents, but don't listen to your parents.
That's kind of,
and particularly with
paradox.
education, don't study what they want you to study. A common thing I ask kids: who wants to be a doctor? And the hands go up. Or my mother wants me to be a doctor. It's not the question I asked you. What do you want to do? Very difficult to not listen to your parents, because a lot of parents, particularly in presidential school and a lot of places, are giving up huge sacrifices for their kids. And always remember that if you're 15. When you're sitting where they are, you'll see things differently. But listen to your parents. Don't listen to your parents. Everyone thinks you don't have to do things all immediately. You've got a long way ahead of you, and you've got to be prepared to take hold of anything that comes your way. So you've got to be the same thing that I said about myself earlier. You've got to be able to go with the flow. But 15, you think you know everything, and you don't know anything. That's the thing. If you realise that, you'll be fine. A long way to go, yeah. Don't be in a hurry. That's what I would say. And particularly now, there's a lot of opportunities, I would think, in Uzbekistan that there have never been before. So, forgive me for saying that. Listen to your parents, but don't listen to your parents. If they've got something cut out for you, if that's not what you want to do, then you've got to find a way of not doing it. That's the key. And of course, education never. I don't know many people that would say education is always a good investment in your future. I'm bound to say that as a teacher. And that doesn't mean to say you go to school, but that means you learn stuff, Even if you're going to be a barber, have a skill. Have something you're good at. That would be my advice.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot. This whole podcast, we went over so much stuff, and I'm going to have to rewatch this podcast at least a few times to take it all in. Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
No.
And
thank you.
It was a lovely conversation.
Yeah,
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
No, great. I apologise if I a bit of a ramble, and a couple of times you asked me some actually good questions, got me thinking. Ask me next Tuesday, as I said, and I might give you different answers. But that was great.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Good luck with everything that you do.
Yeah, and we would love to have you on the show a few more times in the future.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you.
It was all great. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It was a lot of fun. It was awesome, I guess. And if you liked our content, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave us a thumbs up. And if you got any comments you'd like to make, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you. you.